what remote part of the world do we find you in today?
London today. How are you?
London today. Awesome. We're doing well here. It's funny because I hear from people all the time that they feel like they just don't fit in. And it's a funny thing because I think as people are going through the rigors of school, especially junior high, especially if they're in a public school for whatever reason, there really is this need, this innate need to fit in. You say you were a misfit growing up and that you think it's actually contributed to your success. How?
Yes, you brought up a lot of good points. For me, I experienced this intense need to fit in college, and it's it's something I think a lot of people go through. And people can tend to think that fitting in will help them get ahead, but really that's not the case. Sometimes sticking out will get you further ahead than fitting in. And it's, in fact, as you grow up, the people who stick out the most tend to do better both in their personal life with their friendships and in careers, although most people don't think that's the case.
Yeah, it really is. That is counterintuitive, I have to admit. And the other thing that you wrote about in your article that is also counterintuitive, it says, I've always thought the more intelligent people you surround yourself with, the more intelligent you are as a group and the more quickly you meet your goals. That is what I thought. But you point to studies, I believe it's meta-analyses, that say that that's not exactly true. If you surround yourself with too many intelligent people, just the whole groupthink dynamic actually makes you more sluggish as a group in terms of reaching your goals?
Yes, exactly. And that particular study was a meta-analysis. And they were looking at how people behave, how people and animals behave in large groups or in swarms. And one thing they found was that if you have a certain number of intelligent people in a group already, adding more intelligent people won't save that group or help that group find a solution faster. And an animal study, as an example, find like a watering hole faster. So there's a limit on that. And I think the more people can understand that you can't really save a group past a certain point as far as being more intelligent than an individual. The group is always going to be slower, and fitting into a group is not always to your benefit or to the group's benefit.
Because I think that most parents, as we're parenting our children, we tend to say to our kids, hey, we want to help you fit in. I mean, I know parents who go to great lengths to make sure that they can afford the right shoes or the right jeans or whatever to make sure their child is going to fit in. You say that might not be such a good idea if you're really concerned about the long-term success of your child, because misfits actually tend to do better in life. What is it, Dr. Hankel, about the misfit that makes them somehow more equipped for life? What specifically?
I think misfits, and there's studies to back this up, are more willing to take risks. So they're less risk averse. And especially, I think nowadays that some light is really being shed on this, and the scientific community is becoming more and more interested because of the entrepreneurship boom. We know now that if you step out on your own to do something where there's a need, you can be much more successful and much happier and more fulfilled than just trying to grind it out working for somebody else, as an example. But as popular as that is, only 13% of the population these days are entrepreneurs. Yet 74% of all millionaires own their own business. So stepping out on your own and doing something on your own, being a misfit in that sense, can be a better long-term choice. And I think if parents realize that, they might encourage their kids to kind of step away from the crowd and figure out who they are on their own instead of trying to fit into the crowd.
So what are the traits that we should nurture either in ourselves or in our children that are, you're calling them intelligent misfit traits? What specifically are those personality traits that we should be sort of nurturing, I guess you're saying?
Well, I think the biggest one is independence, the ability to stand on your own and not need to be around other people 24/7 to feel okay. Just feeling okay on your own and spending some time with yourself, figuring out who you are and what you want without any sort of outside influence or outside expectations. I would say that's highly important, because that will result in your child or a growing person getting a strong sense of self and creating their own sense of morals and their own decision-making abilities instead of just following the herd or following the swarm or following the group. And this is what can lead to creative breakthroughs. There's a lot of other studies that have shown that people, who spend more time on their own and don't listen to outside opinions can actually be more creative. So I think to start, those are a couple of things.
But there was a big study last week. I used it in my monologue that talked about how important companionship is. You know, we need to be able to stand alone. We need to be able to take risks. But there is another side of that. Balance is important here. Speak to that for a moment.
No, absolutely, I agree. I think human beings have three prime needs, like psychological needs, and I think those are autonomy, and that's kind of what we talked about here, the ability to be on your own and have your own sense of self, your own sense of control. But then the second one is connection. And connecting with other people is highly important. There are a lot of studies that show that people who are disconnected or lonely or do not form relationships, they get sick more often, they die sooner,
Yeah.
a whole host of things. And in fact, not connecting with other people is the same as like smoking 14 cigarettes a month or something like that. There's a pretty interesting study on that. So I absolutely agree.
Yeah, twice as dangerous as obesity to be lonely and isolated, according to this latest study. Dr. Hankel, what is your advice to people who feel like they are a misfit, but they're not exactly sure how to take that and make it work for them in their careers and their lives?
Yeah, the biggest thing I would say is start seeing your weakness as your uniqueness, as a strength, as something that you can leverage. If you flip it and use it to your advantage, there are other people out there like you that want that, right? So don't worry about fitting into maybe the small group that's close to you. Realize that there's 7 billion people in the world and that you have a tribe somewhere that you can connect with. And so it's kind of a combination, like you said, it's a balance of stepping out on your own and realizing that there are going to be other people like you. There are going to be other misfits that you can connect with.
Is this why when I went back to my high school reunion that it seemed like I just want to say the nerds, you know, the guys with the pocket protectors, those guys are running multi-million-dollar corporations. And not only that, they got better looking. I don't know where that fits into all this, but that's what happened. And the jocks, they were a little plump. They were just not as quite as good looking. And most of them were kind of still there where we all were in high school. Is that part of why that happens?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely don't want to peak too early.
Yeah.
People that early on during those kind of formative years, if they get used to staying in the group and not taking any risks and always kind of fitting in, it can really stunt their growth. But maybe the kids that either by choice or maybe just by their environment are misfits or outcasts, they go on to rely on themselves. And that's a key thing to keep in mind here is self-reliance. Because I think if there's one trait that separates people that go on to be successful versus those that don't, it is self-reliance. So it doesn't mean that you're a jerk or try to not get along with people. It just means that you can count on yourself. And I talked about that in one of the points, was that people who have that kind of self-efficacy, there's a study from, I believe it was with Harvard business students, that people that have self-efficacy, they do better even in corporations, even where you are part of the group. So standing out, having self-confidence, having self-reliance, and self-efficacy is a key trait of a misfit.
So send the bullies a thank you note is what this all comes down to. I know my husband, he has this recurrent nightmare. He once upon a time, for no reason, beat up this kid because he thought he looked wrong. And my husband, he still just agonizes over having done that to this kid. And then one day we ran into the kid's mom at a political fundraiser, and the mom said, oh, she didn't use the word rocket scientist, but whatever term she used actually translates to rocket scientist. He's doing okay. He's really over it now, John. And I always think of that when I think about somehow being that kid that just looked wrong really set him apart from the crowd, yes, but made him more autonomous, made him trust his own instincts more, made him willing to take risks because just going to school every day was a risk for him. And so maybe we all reach out and thank the bullies, Isaiah. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I totally agree with that because, I mean, we've talked about this before. Pain is motivation. And if you can turn kind of negative experiences into productivity, the sky's the limit.
That's it. IsaiahHankel.com is the website. He is the cheeky scientist. He has some of the best posts. I wait every week for your posts, Isaiah, because I love them so much. Thank you for being on the show with us. We look forward to having you back again soon. Safe travels.